I still remember the sound of that promise, the way Aunt Clara's voice trembled when she said it. Promise me you'll never open that box, Erin. No matter what happens. I was 17 then. Young, curious, and foolish enough to think every secret could be solved with courage. I had no idea that promise would haunt me for the rest of my life. She lived in an old farmhouse on the edge of Maple Hill, a place where time seemed to move slower, where every clock ticked just a bit behind. To most people, she was the quiet widow who kept to herself, always wearing the same faded green sweater and humming to the birds. But to me, she was my second mother, the only person who ever understood me. When my parents died in a car accident, Aunt Clara took me in. She never talked much about the past, never let anyone into the attic, and never ever let anyone touch the wooden box on her nightstand. It was small, carved with roses, and always locked. Once, when I asked about it, she smiled faintly and said, "Some memories are too heavy to carry twice." I didn't understand. But that night when I went to bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That box. What could possibly be inside? Years went by. I left for college, visited during holidays, and every time, that same box sat there beside her lamp. Untouched, unspoken, eternal. Until one winter I got the call. Her voice on the nurse's phone was soft. "She doesn't have long." When I reached the hospital, Aunt Clara was lying pale, fragile, yet peaceful, like someone who had finally made peace with her ghosts. She held my hand and said just 5 words before she took her last breath. "Remember your promise, my boy." I nodded through tears. Meant it. I really did. After the funeral, I stayed at her house to sort through her things. The silence in that old farmhouse felt alive, like it was breathing with memories I couldn't see. The scent of lavender still lingered in the hallways, and the wind whispered against the windows like a voice trying to speak. And then, I saw it, that same box, sitting quietly on her nightstand. For 3 days I avoided it. I told myself promises matter. But grief has a way of turning curiosity into madness. On the 4th night I gave in. I picked up the box, felt the cold metal lock, and realized it was already open. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, yellowed and fragile. Each one was addressed to "My dearest Samuel." Froze. Samuel was my father. I opened the first letter. Her handwriting was gentle, shaking slightly, filled with love and pain. "Dear Samuel, you told me once that love was meant to be selfless. But how do I live selflessly when the world took you from me and gave me your son to raise?" My breath caught. My eyes blurred. The letters weren't written to her brother. They were love letters. And Clara. And my father. I dropped the letter. The walls seemed to close in. The clock on the dresser ticked louder. I opened another letter, then another. She wrote about how they'd fallen in love before my father met my mother, how circumstances, family, and guilt had forced them apart, and how, even after he married, they stayed in contact through letters they never sent. And then I found a photo. A young Clara, smiling, holding my father's hand at a lake I'd been to as a child. On the back she'd written, "Some loves must live in silence." I sat there, surrounded by her words, by a love that wasn't supposed to exist. I didn't know what to feel. Betrayal, shock, pity. All I could think about was the way she'd looked at me when I was young, not just as her nephew but something deeper. And suddenly, all her silence made sense. Why she never married again. Why she always looked at me with that strange mixture of love and sorrow. Why she made me promise never to open that box. Because she knew the truth would change how I saw her, and how I saw myself. That night I burned the letters. Every single one. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood what she meant when she said, "Some memories are too heavy to carry twice." Some love stories aren't meant to be remembered, only respected. It's been years since then. I still live in that farmhouse. Every morning, I open the windows and let the light fall on the nightstand, where a small, empty wooden box still sits. I never threw it away. Because even though I burned the letters, I couldn't destroy the love that lived inside them. Sometimes late at night, I swear I can hear her humming downstairs, that same soft tune she used to sing while making tea. And every time I do, I whisper, I kept your secret, Aunt Clara. Maybe love doesn't always look like forever. Maybe it looks like silence, like a promise kept, like a box that stays closed. Because in the end, the greatest proof of love is knowing when not to open the box. If you're still here, maybe you've opened boxes of your own. Memories you wish you hadn't, truths you weren't ready for. But remember, not every mystery needs to be solved. Some just need to be cherished. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next life story with love and respect.